Alrighty, friendos, welcome in. So today's video is going to be a guide on how to test for each specific ghost. This is going to be for people playing on Nightmare mode, or if you're playing on Zero Evidence and you're trying to test for the ghost when you're down. So like on Nightmare mode, you're going to have like 2 pieces of evidence, and then you're going to have to do a test between these ghosts. And so we're going to go over those tests today. If you found this video helpful, definitely drop it a like. If you love it, drop me a sub. Otherwise, let's go and hop into the tests we're going to do. Now, unfortunately, it would take me forever to try to get every single ghost and their specific behaviors in footage. So I am just going to do these tests as if we're going against that ghost or if we're trying to test for that ghost. So I'm not going to be able to include clips of like each significant like speed or behavior change. We're just going to do these tests as if we're potentially have those ghosts. So I am on a Nightmare mode, Nightmare game right now. I'm not going to like figure out what kind of ghost this is. Maybe we will at the end. But I'm just going to go through and check off each piece of evidence. So I'm going to check off like 2 pieces of evidence that you might find and help you narrow down what the ghost could be and what tests you're going to do based off of that evidence you have. And also these tests, like I said, you can use on Zero Evidence if you're playing with no evidence, which is usually how I play. All right, I'm just going to turn on the breaker so that we can do some stuff. The first evidence I'm going to check off, I'm not going to go in order, but I do want to cover this one because I've had some people tell me that they have a trouble with mimics. Because mimics can be very sneaky. So the first tell with a mimic is that you are always going to have orbs. So say you have like orbs and fingerprints. It's going to tell you it could be a Banshee, Hantu, or Obake. But if you're playing on evidence, or even if you're playing on professional, if you have orbs as evidence, you're always going to want to check for spirit box and freezing temperatures. If you're playing on Nightmare and you say you have ghost orbs and fingerprints, you also want to check for one of these because a mimic will have 3 pieces of evidence. It will have, say, ghost orbs, fingerprints, spirit box, ghost orbs, fingerprints, freezing, etc. It'll always have ghost orbs and then 2 other pieces of evidence, even on Nightmare. So if you have ghost orbs as evidence when you're playing on Nightmare, always check for the other mimic's piece of evidence because it could be a mimic. Other things you can do to test for a mimic is to see if its behavior changes during a hunt. Like say in one hunt it's normal speed and the next hunt it's fast. Definitely double check that's a mimic. Like I said, just go here, check to see if it has any of the other evidence. Okay, now I'm just going to go through the list and check off 2 pieces of evidence as if we're playing a Nightmare game and we have EMF level 5 and fingerprints as evidence. So then you would have a Jinn, Goryo, Obake, and Myling. If you have Goryo as an option and you do not have dots, remember dots is forced evidence on Nightmare, so you can immediately cross off Goryo. Now to test for a Myling, actually go and get this ghost to hunt. I'm gonna go get a smudge shake, go and get this ghost to hunt, and I'll tell you how to test for a Myling. Now, Mylings are very quiet ghosts. I do have a complete guide on all ghost behaviors, which I can link down below, but this video is just gonna be about how to test for these ghosts. So yeah, Mylings are very quiet ghosts. You're not gonna hear them as soon as you would hear a normal speed ghost. So what I like to do, gosh, why in Nightmare are there no hiding spots? Is I like to go into a hiding spot, and then when the ghost hunts, I will put the flashlight down on my feet, and I will listen to see if I hear the footsteps before or when my flashlight starts blinking. Mylings, you typically will only hear the footsteps right when your flashlight starts blinking. Other ghosts, you'll hear the footsteps without your flashlight blinking. I'm literally having to pull every single pin. All right. No shot, this ghost is a Dio. This ghost is actually a Dio. You're not making this easy for me to test for a Myling right now, friendo. Alright, well, this is how you do a Dio test. If you're not sure if the ghost is a Deogen or not, this is it. You're gonna hear with a Dio, you're gonna hear ghosts. If you're hiding, you're gonna hear it very fast when it's far away. So if the ghost could potentially be a Dio, maybe not try to hide until you're sure it's a Dio or not. Because if you are hiding, you don't have a smudge stick, and the ghost comes up on you like that, you're probably dead. So I mean, Dio's very obvious. This is what they look like. All right, let me go and hop into a game against a non-Dio, and I'll try to show you the Myling test again. Of course, this ghost would go downstairs, so I'm trying to test for a Myling. I'm back upstairs. So when you're doing a Myling test, keep in mind that this test is most accurately done when the ghost is on the same floor as you. So if the ghost goes downstairs and you hear its footsteps and your flashlight isn't blinking, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not a Myling. You want to do this test when the ghost is on the same floor as you. So you see like we could hear the footsteps well before the flashlight started flickering? That means this ghost is not a Myling. A Myling, you would just hear the footsteps right when your flashlight started blinking. So you could definitely rule this out as not being a Myling. All right, so the next ghost with this piece of evidence we're talking about is the Obake. There's two ways to test for an Obake. The one being is that an Obake will leave a 6-fingered fingerprint, which I will leave a picture of that on the screen right now, what a 6-fingered fingerprint looks like. But if you are going against Obake and he's just refusing to leave a fingerprint, what you can also do is loop the ghost. And what you're looking for is for it to change his ghost model. Now, Obake will change his ghost model at least once per hunt. Which this ghost, I didn't see it change his ghost model. So I'm gonna guess it is not an Obake. Also, what the ghosts can do too, what I've had them do, is if they're a ghost model that has like different variations, so say it's like the child, and you see it in the same hunt, you see it crawling, but then a second later you also see it walking, that also means it's an Obake. Obake has the ability to change its like stance within the same ghost model. So if you see that, you can also roll that as an Obake. Obakes also have to have fingerprints as evidence. Obakes also have only a 75% chance to leave fingerprints when they touch the door, while their ghosts will always leave a fingerprint when they touch the door if they have fingerprints as evidence. So if you see a ghost touch a door and there's no fingerprint on it whatsoever, then you can, unless it's like a ghost event. The ghost is a ghost event and shuts the door, don't count that. But if you see a ghost touch a door and it does not leave a fingerprint, then it could likely be an Obake. Alright, the next ghost we're going to talk about with this piece of evidence is the Jinn. There's three ways to test for a Jinn. The first being, if the ghost at any point in the game turns off the breaker, you can rule out Jinn. Jinns are not able to turn off the breaker. Keep in mind though, if you turn on too many lights, or if you have just enough lights on, but then the ghost decides to turn on the last light needed to flip the breaker, this doesn't necessarily mean it's not a Jinn, it just means the ghost turned on a light and flip the breaker. So Jinns technically, I guess in a way, can turn off the breaker if they turn on the last light needed to trip the breaker. Another way you can test for a Jinn, and probably the least effective and a strategy that I personally never use, but you could potentially use, is to leave an EMF reader at the breaker. When the breaker is on and the Jinn chooses to use its ability, which is to drain your sanity, it will leave a random EMF 2 reading at the breaker. So you can leave an EMF here, and if you randomly get an EMF 2 reading at the breaker and nothing happened near it, you can assume that, we'll see like that's a ghost event. So that would not be a Jinn. But then you could assume that that is the Jinn using its ability. But my favorite way to test for a Jinn, when the breaker is on, I will get into a position where the ghost is going to round the corner and get line of sight with me. So the way the Jinn works is that when the breaker is on and they get line of sight with you from far away, they will speed up to catch up to you, and then they will go back down to normal speed. They're not like super fast like a Revenant, maybe more like twin speed when they do it, but you want to get into a position where they get line of sight with you, and then you can see if there's an immediate speed change. Okay, so ghosts come from over there. Okay, so you see how this ghost didn't immediately increase its speed? A Jinn would, when it saw you right there, it would immediately speed up a little bit to catch up to you. So if you don't see that instant speed increase when it rounds the corner and sees you from far away, you can rule out Jinn. Okay, so let's say you have EMF 5 and ghost rating as evidence. You're trying to test for, well, we did a Myling test, but if you're trying to test for a spirit or a shade, the way to test for a spirit is you want to, when the ghost is able to hunt you, you want to smudge the ghost. You can do this in or outside of a hunt. You just have to make sure that you're smudging the ghost wherever it is. And if the ghost does not hunt you for 3 minutes, that means it's a spirit. Spirits cannot hunt you for 3 minutes after you smudge them. And if you're smudging it during a hunt, you want to start your timer right when the smudge stops burning. Now you can also smudge it outside of a hunt. You just have to be careful that you're smudging actually where the ghost is or near its ghost room, and then you want to set a timer again right when the ghost stops. When the smudge stick stops burning. Now, test for a shade. You would want to sit in the ghost room or near the ghost room, and if the ghost hunts on top of you like it just did, that means it cannot be a shade. Shades are also like super boring ghosts, so if you notice it does very few ghost events, or if its ghost events are transparent or mostly air balls, and then this ghost is just like doing hardly anything at all, like it's hardly touching doors, throwing things, it's most likely a shade. Alright, so say you have EMF 5 and freezing temperatures as evidence. You're trying to, we already did Jinn test, or not a test for a shade, but if you're trying to test for an Oni or twins, let's go ahead and talk about how to test for an Oni. One of the easiest ways to test for it's an Oni or not is if you get the airball event. If you get this airball ghost event, then you know that it is not an Oni. But if you don't get that event and you're like, I need to test if this thing is an Oni, again, you can loop the ghost. Onis are very visible during hunts. They hardly blink at all. We're testing for an Oni right now. So we're looking at its blink. This ghost has a very normal blink. You see how it's blinking a lot. It's not super duper visible the whole time. This is not an Oni. An Oni is going to be very visible for most of the hunt. And to test for twins, what you want to do is listen to the ghost speed during a hunt without any line of sight. So you want to sit in a hiding spot and listen to the speed of the ghost. If you hear a ghost that is either slightly slower than normal or slightly faster, this is most likely twins. Now, twins don't always send out... Okay, hold on one second. And like I said, for twins, what you want to do is sit in a hiding spot and listen to the speed. If you hear a ghost that is slightly faster or slightly slower, this could mean that it's twins. Now, they're not always going to send out the slow ghost, fast ghost, slow ghost, fast ghost. Sometimes you'll get the slow ghost like 5 hunts in a row before finally getting the fast ghost. Also, if you notice a ghost do 2 interactions at once, so say it touches a door and throws an object at the same time in different rooms, this could also mean that it's twins. Twins are capable of doing 2 interactions at one time. Sometimes the twins will also hunt from like a completely different location in their ghost room. This could be the twin sending out its decoy. All right, so say you have EMF and dots as evidence. To test for a Wraith, we already test for an Oni, so we know how to test for an Oni. Test for a Wraith, what you want to do is you want to put you want to put salt down in the ghost room. Wraiths are incapable of stepping in salt, so if the ghost steps in the salt at all, you can rule out Wraith. So for example, this ghost stepped in the salt, so we know that we can rule out Wraith. What I like to do is I like to put salt like in front of a motion sensor, and if you see the ghost activate the motion sensor and not step in the salt, then that means that's going to be a Wraith. The only way to test for a Goryo on Nightmare mode is to, first off, it's going to have dots as evidence. So if it doesn't have dots, you know you can rule out Goryo. But Goryo dots you can only see through a video camera when you're not in the same room as the ghost. So to test for a Goryo, what you can do is you can put dots down in the ghost room, and then you want to look through the video camera and see if you see dots. If you only see dots through the video camera and you never see dots in person, then you know that this is a Goryo. And to test for a Raiju, you want to see how fast the ghost is around electrical equipment. Raijus speed up significantly when they're near electrical equipment. So what I like to do is put out equipment near where it's going to hunt. So a video camera, leave your flashlight on. The equipment has to be on for it to get the speed up boost from it. And then when it's hunting, you want to listen to if it gets any faster near the equipment. Okay, so that ghost did not get any faster when it got close to the... Oh! We actually just saw the Obake ability that we were talking about earlier. You see how it shapeshifted? So this ghost is going to be an Obake. So say you have EMF 5 and ghost orbs as evidence. This is actually a super easy combo. We've already talked about how to test for both of these, but you can actually immediately rule out Obake because Obake has forced fingerprints as evidence. So it just immediately would be a Raiju. You don't even have to test for it. But if it hunts, you will obviously see that it gets faster around equipment. But that is an easy combination right there. If you get EMF 5 in Spirit Box, we already talked about how to test for each of these. Spirit, you want to smudge it and see if it doesn't hunt you for 3 minutes. Wraith, put down salt in the room and see if it steps in the salt or not. Twins, listen to the speed during the hunt. If it's either fast, slightly slower or slightly faster, then you know it's twins. So say you have fingerprints and ghost writing as evidence. You're trying to test to see if you have a Poltergeist, Demon, or Myling. Myling we've already talked about, but Demon, a Demon's going to be an early hunter. He's old. Demons have a rare chance to hunt you at any sanity, so they could hunt you very early on in the game. This ghost is bullying me right now. If you notice a ghost hunts you super early on in the game, it could definitely be a demon. Another way to test for a demon is to put crucifixes in the room in like very bad spots, because demons have an increased range on the crucifix. They actually have a 5-meter range instead of a 3-meter range. So if it seems like the ghost is using the crucifix, even if it's not like super duper close within the 3-meter range, then it could likely be a demon. Another way to test for a demon is to smudge it, either outside of a hunt or during a hunt, and you want to set a timer for 60 seconds. The ghost is able to hunt you, and you smudge it, and it doesn't hunt you for 60 seconds. Or should I say it hunts you under 90 seconds. And this mainly ghost that can hunt you under 90 seconds after you smudge it. So it can hunt you as early as 60 seconds after you've smudged it. To test for a Poltergeist, there's a couple different ways you can go about it. The safer way, I suppose, would be to set up a pile of items in the ghost room. Demons have the ability to explode a pile of items. So if you set up a pile of items in its room, and you see it just explode the items, and like you'll know it when you see it, like it's very hard to miss, then this will be a Poltergeist. Now, if you're unsure if it's a Poltergeist, and it's not exploding the pile of items, another way to test if it's a poltergeist is to loop it. You want to create a pile of items on the, like say this kitchen island or any like loopable area, and you want to see how the ghost interacts with the items during a hunt. Poltergeists throw items like crazy during hunts, like probably like 1 or 2 items every second. It's hard to miss. Now every ghost throws items, but a poltergeist is just insane with items. It throws them like crazy. And so as you can see, this ghost is hardly throwing anything. Poltergeist will be throwing things like absolutely crazy by this point. So you can immediately rule that ghost off as a poltergeist. I mean, we know it's an Obake, because I don't know if you saw right there that it shapeshifted. But yeah, poltergeist would be throwing things way more often. So say you have fingerprints and freezing temperatures as evidence. We've already talked about how to test for a demon, Jinn, and mimic. For mimic, you would just look for orbs. If you don't see any ghost orbs, you can rule out mimic. Remember, mimics always have ghost orbs. They're the only ghost in Nightmare that can have 3 pieces of evidence. But to test for a Hantu, Hantus, the way they work is they are fastest in colder temperatures, and they are slower in warmer temperatures. Hantus also have freezing as forced evidence. So if the Hantu, if freezing is not evidence, then you can immediately rule out Hantu. But to test for a Hantu, what you want to do is you want to, wherever the freezing room is, you want to listen to how fast it is coming out of that room. If it is lightning speed coming out of that room and then it slows down when it gets into the room that you're in, say this room is like 18 degrees Celsius, you know it's a warm room, and then it immediately slows down when it gets into this room, then it's most likely a Hantu. Hantus also do not speed up as they're chasing you. They do not increase with line of sight speed. So if you're looping the ghost and it's, you know, you're in a warm room and it's slow, and also is not speeding up with line of sight, you can know that this is a Hantu. So as you can see, this ghost is speeding up gradually as I'm looping it. We would know that this is definitely not a Hantu. Okay, say you have fingerprints and dots as evidence. We've already talked about how to test for a Goryo. You would just look to see if you only see dots to the video camera and you never see dots in person. So if you see dots in person, you can immediately rule out Goryo. Now test for a phantom. There's 2 ways to test for a phantom. If you take a picture of the ghost during a ghost event and it disappears, but the event continues, this means it's a phantom. You also will not see the phantom in the actual ghost picture. Another way to test for the phantom is to loop the ghost, and you want to pay attention to its blink. A phantom is like a reverse Oni. It has a very long blink, so it's almost like invisible. So if you're looping the ghost and you're like having a hard time tracking it because it just seems like it's invisible, this is most likely a phantom. So we already know that this ghost isn't a phantom, but I'll go ahead and loop it for you so you can see what a normal blink looks like, and then you can compare it to the ghost you're going against and be like, well, this blink's super long. It's very hard to track this ghost. Could it potentially be a phantom? All right, so this is a normal blink right here. You see how it kind of blinks in and out. It's a little hard to see, but there's not like super long blinks where it's very, very invisible. So we could definitely rule out phantom with this ghost. Now, test for a Banshee is super easy on multiplayer. To test for a Banshee on multiplayer, you each take turns looping the ghost, and if at any point the ghost completely ignores somebody, like you'll literally be able to walk through the ghost because it just will not care about you. Yeah, if you're playing with your friends and you potentially have a Banshee, if one of your friends is able to go out in the open while the ghost is hunting and literally just follow it around and like walk through it and it doesn't go for them, that means it's a Banshee. A Banshee targets only 1 person as long as everybody is in the house. It'll only target 1 person. So all the other 3 people can just kind of walk about the house as they want during a hunt, and it will not kill them. Now, if the target at any point leaves the house, the Banshee will hunt as normal. So if you're the target, let your friends know when you're leaving because they could potentially die. Otherwise, honestly, if you're the Banshee's target, you just kind of sit in a hiding spot and let your friends see what they gotta do. Let them do the objectives, get the bow and picture, whatever. And now if you're on solo and you're trying to figure out if you're going against the Banshee, good luck. No, I'm kidding. The only way to test on solo, if you're going against a Banshee, is to sit there and listen with a paramic. What you're listening for is a Banshee scream. I'll go and play that for you right now so you can hear what it sounds like. We would just sit there and listen for the Banshee scream for however long it takes. And if you hear it, then you know it's a Banshee. So you can do that on multiplayer as well. You'll still get the Banshee scream on multiplayer, but it's much easier just to test, have each person take a turn looping the ghost and see if it ignores anyone at any point. Now say you have fingerprints and ghost orbs as evidence. You can immediately rule out Hantu because there's no freezing temperatures. I would also be checking for Mimic, right? Because Mimic could have, I would check for Spirit Box and freezing temperatures just to make sure that it can potentially be a Mimic. But if you've checked for Spirit Box and freezing temperatures and it doesn't have either of those, and you're for sure it's a Banshee or Obake, we've talked about how to test for those. So go ahead and skip over that. If you have fingerprints in Spirit Box, we've already talked about these tests. If you see no ghost orbs whatsoever, if you've checked the ghost room all around, you see no ghost orbs, you can rule out Mimic. And then you just have to do the tests for Poltergeist and Phantom. Okay, so now say you have ghost writing and freezing temperatures as evidence. You can immediately rule out Moroi because Moroi is Spirit Box is forced evidence. So you can rule out Moroi. Demon and Shade we've already talked about. Revenant, what you're going to be looking for is you want the ghost to hunt, and you want to hear a ghost that is extremely slow without line of sight. And then if it sees you, it's going to immediately speed up. So if you're hiding and the ghost starts hunting and it's just like done, 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 done. And then if it sees somebody, it just immediately speeds up. Easy Revenant. Revenant is very easy to test for. Now say you have ghost writing and dots as evidence. We've already talked about how to test for a Dio. We had a Dio earlier. Thaye is going to be a lot more interesting. So Thaye is the only ghost that can age in this game. When the game first starts, the Thaye is going to be as young as possible. And what that means is that it is more aggressive. So it can hunt you at 75% sanity. And it's also going to be super fast. So if you notice the ghost hunts early, not only does it hunt early, but it's very fast, it's most likely a Thaye. But if the ghost doesn't hunt early and you're around the ghost for a while, and when eventually it does hunt, it's kind of slow. And when you're looping it, it doesn't speed up with line of sight. The Thaye is another ghost that does not speed up with line of sight speed. You know this is a Thaye. So if you're not sure if it's a Thaye or not, put some crucifixes in the room, sit around the ghost. Every 1 to 2 minutes, the Thaye will age. So you just have to be around the ghost enough, and then have the ghost hunt and loop it. And if you notice it's slower, and it also does increase speed with line of sight, then this is going to be a Thaye. If you happen to have a Ouija board as well, you can ask the ghost at the beginning of the game, how old are you? And then later on, after you've aged it, just by being near it, you can ask it again how old it is, and if the age has gone up, this also means it's a Thaye. Now say you have ghost writing and ghost orbs as evidence. We've already talked about how to test for a Revenant and Thaye. To test for a Mare, so Mares can hunt you at 60% sanity if you're in the dark. So if you're in the dark, you notice the ghost hunts you kind of early, it could likely be a Mare. Another way to test for a Mare is to turn on the light near the ghost. And what you're looking for is after you turn on the light, it immediately turns it off. So it kind of looks something like this. So you'll turn the light on, and then it'll immediately turn it off. Now don't get it too confused with a ghost event. I've had this happen to me before, where I turn the light on and the ghost is a ghost event. Because remember when it goes ghost events, it'll either turn off the light or like touch a door. So if you turn on the light and there's a ghost event right after and the light goes off, it doesn't mean it's a Mare, it just means it's a ghost event and it's turning off the light. So if you're trying to test for a Mare, you can either sit in the dark and see if it hunts you at early sanity, or you can turn on a light in the ghost room and see if it immediately turns it off. They say that Mares are more likely to do light-breaking ghost events, but I wouldn't bank on this being a Mare. I've had Poltergeist do like 4 light-breaking ghost events. So I would definitely keep it on your sanity, or make a mental note on your sanity. Or also just test the light test. Now you can't sit here and do this. The Mare won't likely do its ability. So just every once in a while, flick on the light, see if it immediately turns it off after you've turned it on. All right, now say you have ghost writing and Spirit Box as evidence. We've already talked about how to test for these 4 ghosts. Moroi this is gonna be the first time I talk about Moroi. So Moroi has Spirit Box as force evidence, so this could be a Moroi. Also, if you use the Spirit Box and you get a response, if it's a Moroi, it will leave a curse on you and anyone that was near you when you got the Spirit Box response, which means your sanity is going to drain twice as fast. Standing in the light, holding a candle, none of those will keep your sanity from draining. The only thing that will remove this curse is take sanity pills. So if you notice, use the Spirit Box, and then if you're on Nightmare, you won't be able to see your sanity drain. But if the ghost hunts, kind of quickly after that, assuming your sanity is drained, it could potentially be a Moroi that's left the curse on you with the Spirit Box. But the easiest way to tell if it's a Moroi is to listen to its speed. So the lower your sanity, the faster the Moroi is going to be. And this also is affected by the group average sanity. So what I would do is, if you're playing in a group, is have everyone try to lower their sanity. But just by sitting in the dark. Or you all could try to talk to the Spirit Box and get a response. That way you can get the curse and have your sanity lower. So knowing that your group average sanity is as low as possible, listen to the ghost speed. A Moroi is going to be very fast the lower your sanity. Morois also will speed up with line of sight. So if it's very fast, and it also speeds up with line of sight, it is likely a Moroi. Now say you have freezing and dots as evidence, and you're trying to test for Yurei and Oni. We've already talked about how to test for an Oni. Either look out for an airball event, which would rule out an Oni, or loop the ghost and see how visible or not visible it is. An Oni will be super visible. If it's not super visible during a hunt, you can go ahead and rule it as a Yurei. The only other way to tell if it's a Yurei is the Yurei has an ability to fully shut a door. So you'll see a door fully open, it'll shut. And when it does this, it'll drain your sanity as well. So if you see a door right in front of you, just fully shut. Now, not to be confused with the ghost event. If the ghost is a ghost event, it can also fully shut a door. This is outside of a ghost event. If it shuts the door, then this is most likely a Yurei. But the easiest way is just to get the ghost to hunt and see if it's an Oni, see how visible it is. And then you can either rule out Oni or rule it as an Oni. Now say you have freezing temperatures and ghost orbs as evidence. We've already talked about how to rule out this ghost, this ghost, this ghost. Let's go and talk about how to rule out whether or not it's an Onryo. The way that Onryo works is that it uses candles as crucifixes. So you want to set up in the ghost room or near where it will hunt candles and crucifixes. All right, so say this room right here is the ghost room. You want to set up candles and crucifixes in this room. Now, if you don't have candles yet, a lot of maps actually have candles on them, like this candle on the right I found sitting right here. So you could always grab a candle that's just inside the map. But you want to set up candles near the crucifixes. The candle for an Onryo will have a 4-meter range, so it just kind of has to be near the crucifixes and have to be on top of it. And what you're looking for is whether or not the ghost blows out the candle, then uses the crucifix, or uses the crucifix when the candle is still lit. If the ghost uses the crucifix while the candle is still lit, you can rule out Onryo. But if the ghost refuses to use the crucifix while the candles are lit, or has to blow out all the candles before using crucifix, then this is most likely an Onryo. So you could, if it is Onryo, you could prevent it from hunting just by having this room full of candles. Now say you have freezing temperatures and spirit box as evidence. We've already talked about all of these ghosts. Again, for a mimic, you'll just want to check for ghost orbs. If there are no ghost orbs, then you can rule out mimic. And say you have dots and orbs as evidence. Now, if you have something like orbs and dots, or orbs and EMF, orbs and ghostwriting, you don't have to worry about mimic. The only time you have to worry about a mimic is if you have like fingerprints, freezing, or spirit box, because those are all evidence that mimic could give you. So if you have something like dots, EMF, or ghostwriting, you don't have to worry about mimic. But if you have dots and ghost orbs, as potential evidence, we've talked about all of these ghosts except for a yokai. So I'm going to show you how to test for a yokai. The yokai is, they're very dumb ghosts. They can't detect your equipment or your voice as close as another ghost would. So how I like to test for a yokai is I like to sit in a room. Now, Willow Street actually has one of the best spots for this, depending on where the ghost room is. If the ghost room is in this living room, this is a little sketchy. But you can actually sit behind these doors with your flashlight on, yelling at the ghost. And if the ghost is easily able to find you, then it's most likely not a yokai. All right, this is actually perfect. We got a summoning circle, so we can get the ghost to hunt down here, and we can do a proper yokai test upstairs. Well, I think the ghost is actually down here. It's been throwing things. Cutie. Alright, so we're gonna go up here into this room. We're gonna turn on our flashlight and just yell at the ghost. I like to use my global mic because they can hear you from farther away. Ghosty! Ghosty, ghosty, ghosty. Ghosty! Alright, everyone, smudge it. So that means that ghost is not a yokai because it was super easy. As soon as it came upstairs, it found us. Now, yokai, when it would come upstairs like that, it's very unlikely that it would come straight into the living room. The only reason it would come straight into the living room is if it just was pathing there anyways. But a yokai would most likely just walk by you and go into the garage, maybe walk around the kitchen. It would not be able to see or hear you and your equipment. And I do believe we have gone over every test that you can possibly do if you're trying to decide between different ghosts on Nightmare, or even if you're playing with no evidence. Like I said, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get every specific ghost to show you specifically what they look and sound like. But hopefully I described well enough how to test for them. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to comment down below. If you found it very helpful, definitely drop a like. If you love it, drop me a sub. Otherwise, good luck ghost hunting, and I will see you in the next one.